text. Here's what the text says very specifically. I went looking at all, then I went looking for maps. I looked at the Israeli maps and the American maps and the European maps of this area, of the whole area, nothing.
Yeah.
Not a single site listed. I'm going, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe the Bible's wrong. Maybe, you know, why is there nothing listed? No archaeological sites in this area. It really bugged me. And so we said, we got to go to Jordan. So we got on the plane, came to Jordan, went to Acor, went to the library, started looking at survey reports. Oh, lo and behold, there are a lot of archaeological sites in this area. 14 major identified ones, hundreds of little ones, 14 major ones. Oh, now we have too many because we're only looking for 5. So we said, oh, then it was process of elimination. So then we started looking at the survey reports, the surface shirting reports, and all of that. Then we said, we got to go see every one of them. So we went down every single one by one by one. And there was one of them that was listed in one particular publication on the sites of the southern Jordan, of the Jordan Valley. And it said that el-Hammam was the largest ruin in the Jordan Valley, period, top to bottom. Well, that's interesting. It's big. And so I saved it for last. So we looked at all the other ones, and some of them were kind of hard to find, but we found them all. And some have been eaten up by the gravel company since then. But we got to this one, and when I saw this one, and at that time I really didn't appreciate the lower tell, which just quadrupled the size of it. But we came up here and I looked at this thing, this big hulking ruin, and I went, wow. This isn't on any map. Nobody has this. Why? What is this gigantic thing? And so we just decided that, and by the way, it had all the Bronze Age signatures. Well, how did we get here? So now let me go back and jump forward to that point. Here's what the text says. It says, Abraham came down from Mesopotamia. By the way, the top of the dam is strictly east-west. So look at the top of the Kafrine Dam, the Earthen Dam. The top of it is east-west. Okay, you take the dam out, you have that perennial river. You go perpendicular to the dam, you have north. So north is that way. East is that. West is that way. East is that way. So Abraham, the text says in Genesis 12 and 13, Abraham comes down from Haran in Mesopotamia. He comes down into Canaan, pitches his tent on a hill between Bethel and Ai. Bethel and Ai, we know where Bethel and Ai is. I excavated there for 6 years. See the highest hill in the haze? The highest point.
Yeah.
That's where Bethel and Ai are located. Okay, Bethel and Ai are on the north side of the Wadi al-Jaya, and which puts them in the sort of the southern cities of the Shechem coalition. Jerusalem coalition would be in the south on the other side of the Wadi. So, I'm sorry, Bethel and Ai are on the south side of the Wadi. Beth Aven is on the north side of the Wadi. But anyway, so they came down right to there. That's where they're staying. He builds an altar to Yahweh. And then it says they went down to Egypt, had that little thing in Egypt, remember? With Sarah and all that. And it says, then they came back to the Negev, and then they went from place to place from the Negev until they came back to the place between Bethel and Ai where they had built an altar to Yahweh. So they came back to that area. They stayed in that area, camped there, and then Lot comes to Abram one day and he says, you know what, we're too big of a clan. We have too many flocks, too many herds, too many people. We can't occupy the same territory. It's problematic. Abraham says, fine, Lot. Probably didn't like Lot anyway. You know, problem child. But you pick a direction. You go to the left, I'll go to the right. Of course, in Hebrew, in the text, there are no words for the cardinal directions. Okay? The Hebrew has no words for those. What you do is you face the rising sun. Okay. Forward, the word forward is east. Backside is behind. Backside, behind or backside. Left is north, right hand is south. So Abram could be saying, Lot, you know, you go to the north, I'll go to the south. You go to the south, I'll go to the north. Because that's basically what he was thinking about. Canaan, on that side of the river. He could either go north or he could go south. He said, you go one direction, I'll go the opposite direction. But Lot then did something different. He didn't go north or south. It says he looked up from Bethel and Ai, and the key question of any research is the one that is necessary to ask to get the right answer. Because a lot of researchers don't know how to ask the right question.
Yeah.
The answer, the question is, where was Lot standing when he lifts up his eyes? That's the operative question. You've got to establish him in a geographical fixed point. Once you understand that, then you can answer the question. Where was he standing? There. He's at Bethel and Ai. It says, Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Hebrew word kol, the entire circle of the Jordan, or plain of the Jordan, was well watered, like the garden of Yahweh, like the land of Egypt. So what does all that mean? The word kikar, it's used in every Semitic language. It's in Akkadian, it's in Eblaite, it's in Ugaritic, it's even in Egyptian. There's even an Egyptian version, kirkur. The word kikar means a circle or a disc. It means, in the Bible, it's translated as a talent, like a talent of silver, talent of gold. It's a weight, it's a large coin thing, 119 pounds for a disc, for a talent of gold. And then you have also the other use of it, which is a flat circular loaf of bread, a pita bread, or a tortilla, as New Mexicans say. So we say, so the word means talent or tortilla. In Egyptian, it means also to create a circle in the sand with a stick. But that's all it means. It's not a geographical term at all. And so, but yet the Bible uses this term geographically 13 times in the Old Testament. So why do they call it the kikar of the Jordan? He says he looks over and sees that the kikar of the Jordan is well watered. The other thing we have to understand is what Ha Yarden is. Then we'll get back to kikar. Ha Yarden, the Jordan, means the descent. The descent of what? What's descending?
The
This
river.
is a watershed.
Yeah.
Everything flows into the Jordan Valley from the hills. Okay, everything on this side flows to the valley. Everything on that side either flows on the western side to the ocean, or it flows on this side to the Wadi. To the Jordan. So the descent is fresh water. It's the descending of all the fresh water, the watershed, down to what? Do you suppose that something called the descent would end when it hits the lowest surface on the earth, the surface of the Dead Sea, 1,300 feet below sea level? Yeah, it dies there, and everything from there is dead water. It's salt water. And so the kikar of the Jordan is what? The circle of the descent is the broad circular floodplain. If you go out into the middle, maybe it'll take you out there in the middle. You stand in the middle, especially on a clear day, and you look to the north and you see the hills of the Jordan Valley closing narrowly to the north. About 25, 30 kilometers north of the Dead Sea, they go out horizontally, almost like this, sideways, and open up into a large valley, and then they come around and close, as you can see right here. This side closes down, the other side does the same thing, closes back down to the Dead Sea, creating, phenomenologically anyway, from the ground, a broad circle. And of course, green all around the edges, because you have Jericho on the other side. You see the green. You have all the farms and the farmland here, creating sort of a green disc or a green circle. And it was very dramatic. It's very dramatic today. It must have been really dramatic in antiquity when you take away all the modern stuff and you just can see what's there by itself. So it says, he saw all of this. He saw the circle of the Jordan, that it was well watered, like the Garden of Yahweh. Well, you jump back to Genesis 2 and it says, how was the Garden of Yahweh watered? A river ran through it. A river. Broke into 4 channels when it left, but a river, it says, ran through it. So he's described, whoever's writing this, Moses or somebody else, notices that's the way this is bisected, right down the center with a river. He says, and it's watered like the Garden of Yahweh. And Egypt. How's Egypt watered? Overflowing of its banks annually. Well, That's exactly what the Jordan does. Spring snow melt in the Lebanon mountains. All of this water comes down, and it would literally back up against the Dead Sea, overflow its banks by several kilometers on each side, which is exactly why the settlement patterns are as they are. The closest, see that little bump right that direction? Oh, you can see it today. Wow.
Yeah, you see it.
There's a little bump. There's a minaret farther on the right, minaret right on the left, and there's a little gray bump right in the middle. That's Tel Rama. That's about as close as you're going to get to the Jordan River without getting stuck in or inundated in one of those 1,000-year floods or 500-year floods. It's going to overflow its banks routinely every year. It's a Nile in miniature. The hydrological system is identical to that. And so whoever was looking at this, I think they must have been sitting here. Whoever's looking at this whole thing, it's like Egypt. That's what Lot saw, because he knows where Sodom is. And so then it says, this is what Lot saw. Then it says Lot traveled eastward. Well, if you go due east from Bethel and Ai, you got to come down to Jericho. And we're exactly east of Jericho.
Okay.
You come down and you come directly east. This is where you come. Now, the Bible says there are 5 cities: Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim, the dual, the plural. There's 2 cities there. Okay? All the Transjordan cities in the Bible are listed in south to north order. That's an Egyptian point of view. And these are on the map lists, many of them on the map list. We know how the Egyptians did their cities in the Transjordan area. If this is true of that, then you would think Sodom would be the southern sort of anchor, big city of all of those listed. Sodom, then you would go north along the same road. Sodom, Gomorrah, Tel Kafrine. Same occupational profile as this site. See the bump? Right there. Go off to the left around that little hill spur that comes out, about 5 more kilometers, and you wind up at Tel Nimrine, which is the second biggest.
About 1/4 this size.
About 1/4 this size. And then right next to it, about a kilometer up the road, same road, is the Zeboim. Right against the hills. Zeboim means the little gazelles. Where the little gazelles live. They live up in the hills. And so there's a little twin, one on each side of the wadi. There's a little stream running between them. A little tell on each side of the wadi. The little Zeboim. That's what we think. So anyway, that makes great sense for what's actually here, and all those tells seem to have the same occupational profile. 3 of the 5 have been excavated. Counting this one. The other thing is this: there are 3 doublets in that story. There's Bethel Ai. Bethel's always listed first. Why? Because it's bigger, and Ai is very small. It's a satellite. So you have Bethel Ai. Then you have Sodom and Gomorrah. Big town, small town. Okay. Then you have Admah, Zeboim. Big town, smaller town. Towns. And so it's interesting that Sodom is always mentioned first. The Sodom doublet is always mentioned first. And Sodom, of the 5, is the only one ever mentioned by itself. It has its own story, and its king is the only one that has a voice or has a part in the story. He actually talks. And so by various things, it's listed first. It's the only one spoken of by itself. It's sort of the anchor city, the southern anchor city. You could make a case that the text is telling us that Sodom is the biggest of the Jordan Disk sites. It's the big dog on the block. Mm-hmm. So when did Abraham live chronologically? He lived in the Middle Bronze Age. That's pretty easy to establish. Middle Bronze II is even much better because all of the covenants, contracts, and treaties, particularly Abimelech and Yahweh, fit into that covenant pattern of the Middle Bronze II period, not earlier, not later. There are many other things about it, but I think he belongs to that period very safely. By the way, there's another reason I know for a fact that he belongs to MB2, because Jerusalem, the city of Shalem or Salem, is mentioned in the story. Melchizedek, king of Salem, king of Salem, of Shalem. Jerusalem. Jerusalem is completely unoccupied from 2500 BC to 1800 BC. Victim of the great collapse of the EB civilizations in this area. There's nobody living in Jerusalem from 2500 BC to 1800 BC. About 1800 BC, Jerusalem and all the highland sites like Hatzor and the north and others, all of a sudden they come up. There's nobody there during Intermediate Bronze Age, nobody there during Middle Bronze 1. So if Abraham's going to have a Jerusalem, Melchizedek's going to have a city, it's got to be during MB2. Can't be any other time. It's a no-brainer. So MB2 is a good time. Now, so what you want to say is, if you want to find Sodom, you want to look for the largest Middle Bronze Age city on the Eastern Jordan Disc. Bingo, you'd have it. Yeah. And two other things. It's also mentioned in Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim are also mentioned in Genesis 10. Right alongside Akkad, Uruk, Babylon, Nineveh. The big cities of Mesopotamia. Well, why would they be listed? Why? Because they're substantial. They're important border. Okay. And they're mentioned there. Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, unto Lasha, or Laish in the north. South to north, again. So we'd have to also have, and by the way, we know what that period is. Genesis 10 describes the rise of the first great cities. We know when that happened. It happened in early Bronze 2. And the great fortified cities begin to be built in early Bronze 2. So you could say we got to have occupation, not just in the Middle Bronze Age time of Abraham, but we also got to have a city that goes back to the early Bronze Age. So we'd have to put that in the mix. On the other thing is the destruction of the city. Not just the destruction of the city, but the destruction of the Kikar and all the cities that sat on the Kikar. And so we would say we'd have to have sort of a universal destruction in that area toward the end of the Middle Bronze 2 period. Sometime toward the end of the Middle Bronze 2 period, all of it's got to go away. And then when Moses, the text tells us, when Moses arrived here and put his command camp on top of this hill, which most scholars agree. I mean, if you were a military man, think about it.
Yeah.
Where would you land? I'd put my command camp right here where nobody can sneak up on me. Besides that, the whole top of the hill would have been as flat as a pancake. Just like that little clean line that we saw down there. Just flat, because all this Iron Age stuff and all this other stuff goes away. You just have a nice flat thing. But anyway, when Moses comes here, it says they fought their way up the Transjordan, but when they arrived at Abel Shittim, word Abel means to mourn a catastrophe. Interesting. When they arrived at Abel, there were acacia trees here, but no people. He didn't fight anybody. Nobody cared that he was here. All this horde of Israelites, nobody cared. Nobody was home.
These, by the way, are acacia trees.
All these things down here, these little straggly green ones, acacias. Acacias grow naturally here. It's a savanna, African savanna, subtropical here. And so, the biblical text suggests that the Kikar has nobody on it. Not only was destroyed in the time of Abraham, but by the time Moses arrives, there's nobody here. Well, guess what? That's exactly the profile. Not only that, but a little bit later, and Phil did this in his dissertation, agriculture eventually did come back in a big way. We have Iron Age silos, grain silos all the way around this place, just dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of them. Agriculture did come back. And so there we are. So where does Lot go? It comes here. It's absolutely no-brainer. By the way, how many choices do you have?
Yeah.
With all of those geographical indicators embedded in the text, whether the story is fact or fiction, as far as the geography is concerned, how many choices do you have?
One easy one is to go east.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. There's nothing else here that could be called even a city, hardly.
Yeah.
Okay?
Much less with a smaller city right down the way.
And with Hammam, or with Sodom being mentioned in Genesis 10, along with the big cities of Mesopotamia, and the coastal cities, you have to ask, well, there must have been something about at least the anchor city of that city-state that was substantial enough to warrant mention. Well, guess what? For 80% of the Bronze Age, but from the close of the Chalcolithic to the end of Middle Bronze II, for 80% of that time, el-Hammam is the largest city in the southern Levant, period. It's the biggest city in the southern Levant. The only two cities that get bigger in MB2 are Ashkelon and Hatzor. That's it. And they get way bigger, by the way. But they don't have as many satellites, so it's sort of one of those, you know, you have this, but we have this.